been back to the campus a few times, but the campus has changed so much and is so much nicer now.
Good. Remind me of the campus.
Augustana College in Rock Island,
That's right.
Illinois.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah.
And it
So the
now
campus
is,
looks nice, huh?
oh yeah, and their student body is much better than when I was there. Back in my day, my German roots made me a minority of about 10% of the student body.
Oh, yeah.
90% were Swedish or Danish.
I
Uh,
see.
but
Interesting.
now they intentionally bring in 20 to 25% foreign students every year,
Good.
and up to 40% African American and Hispanic, and the rest are white. So
Wow.
there aren't nearly as many blondes on campus. And
That's
they have a
interesting.
very diverse faculty now too. It was all
Yeah.
white back in the 60s,
Yeah.
but it's
Good.
very diverse now. So yeah,
Progress is
I'm very
being
proud of
made.
that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah.
and they're doing
I
it
see
very
you have on your
intentionally.
Augustana shirt. I see you have on your August.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my Augustana, yeah, my Augustana
Cross.
cross country shirt.
Good.
So
Okay. There we go. There we go. Hello, everybody. All
there,
Hey,
right.
Leroy.
Leroy.
How you doing?
Good. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, good to be here.
All right. Let's see something.
But I had a kind of a sinus infection before I left. Finished off my Z pack, but it hasn't completely left me. So there'll be some occasional coughing. I apologize ahead of time.
That's all right. As long
Hmm.
as you're here today.
Yeah.
Glad you're here. Now, what are you covering tonight?
Uh, um, let's see, what was it?
Chap-
Chapter 6. Well, the rest,
Chapter 6,
I think it was 8 through 14. Is that
8
what was
through
on?
8 through
Yeah.
14. Yeah.
8. But we're going to, double back. I'm going to double back a little bit, but go through the end of the section.
Okay. So you're talking about 6, 7, and then you take off from there.
Yeah. Well, actually, 5, 6, 7. Hey, Jackie.
Hey,
Hey,
Jackie.
everybody. Hey, Rev, my car's still in the shop.
Major, or you gonna get by?
Huh?
Is it a major thing?
They haven't even gotten to tell me what's wrong with it.
Oh
You
my
guys,
Uh-oh.
this was since last, what? Wednesday? Tuesday?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so anyway, that's why I'm not there with you, and I'm on Zoom tonight. So
Okay,
that's why I don't have transportation. Okay.
Okay.
Now I have written down that Pastor Rick would be covering chapters 8 through 12, and I guarantee you that's probably about all we're gonna get to do. I'm pretty sure. 8 through 12. That's
8
what I
through
got.
12, and he's double backing and trying to pick up.
Actually, 10 is all I'm ready to cover tonight, but
Okay.
8 was where we
we'll
started.
see.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're talking about Rick, you're talking about you review 5, 6, 7, and then
Yes.
deal with 8,
6
9.
and 7 are very short.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really concentrate on
Oh,
8, 9, and 10, I
oh,
think it is. Yeah,
okay.
8, 9, and
Okay.
10.
Bruce, I'm all backwards. Mm-hmm.
Hello, Sarah and Zeke. How y'all doing tonight?
Fresh from the dinner table.
Me too.
That's a good thing.
Thanks again for Sunday, Zeke.
It was easy. Although it's been a while since I've had to come up a spiral staircase from the basement. I can't remember the last time I did that. I'm waiting for the elevator to bring me up.
All right.
You get that for the next time, will you?
Okay.
Get that worked
all right.
out. It was fun.
How did y'all manage in the storm?
Oh, I must have I don't know, special privilege. I was only out of power for about 4.5, 5 hours, but the rest of my neighborhood was 3 and 6 days, depending
Oh,
on where they
really?
were. Yeah,
You're special. You're special.
I'm special.
Hi,
I,
Sarah.
there was grumpy neighbors, I can assure you.
Brother Coon, how did you make out?
Who's that, me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So for me, it was we were not out of electricity at all.
Oh, but
Um,
that's wonderful.
Good.
Yeah.
yeah, it was a blessing. We
Wow.
had a lot of limbs and leaves, and I cleaned up 5 yards. So I've been working hard. Hey, Herman. But I had and my I,
Good to see
you know I
everybody.
live.
Yeah, welcome back. Yeah. We were just asking how
Oh,
to
there's
make out in the storm, and everybody seemed to be doing fairly
Good.
well. And
Good.
Brother Coon, he
Didn't
just
lose
right,
power.
didn't lose power.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was grateful.
yeah.
Listen. Yeah.
The interesting thing is,
Good clean living.
Well, good, clean living.
I lost power for 3 days, so not very much clean living on my side.
And that makes your pastor either, because I was out that long as well.
Yeah. I'm in the middle. I got about a day and close to a day and a half.
Okay.
well, when I first came south, and I never lived with hurricane kind of complications, so I bought myself a generator, and I have started it every year. And this year was the first time it was used for a duration by my neighbor around the corner.
well, good.
He
Because
had
you
it.
didn't need it. You didn't
I
have
didn't
use.
need it. Yeah, why should it sit in my garage when he had a freezer that was going to go bad? So
Right,
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
right.
All
he promised me a steak from the freezer.
right. It is now past 6:30 and time for us. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our South Carolina Synod Inclusive Network book study. Tonight, we will continue with the book Stamped: Racism, Antiracism, and You. Tonight, leaders is Rick Mason. The next session will be held November the 12th. Is that correct? And I should be the leader on that particular one. Anyone want to step up and help me? That'll be good. All right, we're going to, and that's the only one for November because we have the convocation. At least they have planned. Okay. December the 3rd, Jackie and Zeke.
And I'm doing Zeke and me because I took over Jackie's place.
Okay.
Right.
All right, so then let me change that. Bruce, are there any other announcements?
Not that I'm aware of. When is the next meeting? Is Herman is going to lead it?
And Zeke.
That would be December.
December 3rd.
Uh,
The next one is November
November
12th.
12th.
And who is leading that one?
Pastor Cannon.
Unless somebody
Okay,
else can
okay,
step
very
in and help. Okay. All right. No other announcements, then we are going to be turning it over to Rick.
Okay. Let's open with a word of prayer. Guide our thoughts and our conversations this evening, O Lord, and in the midst of us, moving us to greater understanding and action in bringing all of your people nearer to one another and closer to you. Amen.
Amen.
And we're going to begin tonight. I'm going to double back to chapter 5 for just a few minutes and then get us caught up. But chapter 5, if you remember, introduced us to the Enlightenment and its two American stars, Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson. And Franklin wrote that white colonists make this side of our globe reflect a brighter light. Let us bar uneconomical slavery and black people. But perhaps I'm partial to the complexion of my country, for such kind of partiality is natural to humankind. And for his part, if you remember, Jefferson noted that he had many black friends and even studied some anti-racist thought. Unfortunately, when push came to shove, economic realities forced him to purchase and use Africans on his plantation in Virginia. However, and that's all from Reynolds' remix of the book, but he completely omitted the European Enlightenment, which actually predated and influenced the American version. So I'd like to go back just for a few minutes to take a look at some of the salient points as far as race relationships from the European Enlightenment. And there's a quote from a famous economics writer in 1745, Malachi Postlethwaite, who defined the British Empire this way: it is a magnificent superstructure of American commerce and British naval power, all built on an African foundation. So they were realizing, even as far, back in the early 1700s, the contribution of the slave trade and the African workers. But there was another foundation that lay below that, and that's the foundation of racist ideas in Europe. In 1735, Swedish biologist and the son of a Lutheran pastor, Carl Linnaeus, classified humanity into a racial hierarchy from top to bottom: Homo sapiens Europeans, white folk, whom he called very smart and innovative; Homo sapiens Americanus, what we would call Native American Indians, and he said they are ruled by custom. And then Homo sapien Asiaticus, who are ruled by opinion, and Homo sapien Afar, or Africans, whom he called sluggish, lazy, slow, and careless.
Mhm.
A few years later, over in France, in 1756, we find Voltaire, who agreed with that hierarchy that Linnaeus developed, writing, "The Negro race is a species of men as different from ours as a breed of spaniels is from greyhounds."
Whoa. Wow.
And Voltaire was a strong proponent of polygenesis, the belief that there were two creations, one for white folk and one for black folk. But on the other side, Voltaire's segregationist views were opposed in France by a guy named Georges Louis Leclerc, better Buffon. He was a monogenicist, believed in just the one creation, and he was an opponent of slavery. And he wrote that if blacks and whites were separate species, then they could not create together. Then their offspring would be infertile. Thus the word mulatto, derived from Spanish for the word for mule, because mules are infertile offspring of horses and donkeys.
Oh, wow. Mulatto. Mm-hmm.
So these same ideas were being talked about and debated in Europe, even before Americans started, but even as Americans were. And then you'll probably remember that in chapter 6, there was a recap of racist ideas that we've encountered so far in the book, with 7 renditions of one phrase, right? Africans are savages because. And that's a whole, 2-page chapter, which is followed by a 1-page chapter 7, that recaps chapter 6 with the words, "Africans are not savages."
Right.
Which hopefully leads us to chapter 8, where we talk about Jefferson's notes. And there on the first page, on page 55, there's a brief synopsis of feeling and events of the late 18th century.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought this author did kind of neatly. Britain had ended slavery, at least in England, but not in the colonies.
Mm-hmm.
Well, America refused to do that. Britain looked at America as dumb. America said, "Well, you can just go mind your own business, Britain."
That's right.
And Britain said, "You are our business, America." And America said, "But we can change that." And that brings in good old Thomas Jefferson, who sets out to write a Declaration of Independence from Britain. And includes the statement, "All men are created equal." By the way, that that phrase in the Declaration of Independence led the states or colonies of Vermont and Massachusetts to ban slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Then the question comes up, well, all men are created equal, but are black people men?
Oh my goodness. Whoa.
I mean, we hopefully we wouldn't consider that a question, but back then it was considered a question.
That's right.
And evidently Jefferson thought so, because he also declared that slavery was a cruel war against nature. And he wrote that in the original Declaration of Independence, but I don't remember reading that in the Declaration of Independence.
Mm-hmm.
Why was that?
Because it wasn't in there. It got deleted.
That's right. It was edited out. It was deleted. And by the way, that phrase, all men are created equal, was amended to say all free men are created equal in the Constitution of all the 6 Southern original states.
When was it amended?
That's how they came back.
When was it amended? Do you know?
No, I don't. To take the phrase out.
No, we don't.
Just before it was ratified. That's all I know. I don't know exactly when. So then we have the Revolutionary War. And do you know what Thomas Jefferson did during the war?
He's in France.
Right.
No, he didn't go to France yet.
Oh.
No, he hid himself. So the English couldn't find him, and he wrote.
Right. Yeah.
And he wrote a book titled Notes on the State of Virginia that contains his thoughts about black people on pages 57 and 58 of our text. He said they could never assimilate because they were inferior in nature. He said they felt love more and pain less. That they aren't reflective and only operate on instincts.
Yikes.
And he wrote that the freedom of slaves would result in the extermination of one of the races. In other words, it would lead to a race war.
Mm-hmm.
And that the answer to the problem of slaves was that they should be sent back to Africa.
Rick, if you could stop right there, I just need to interject something.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Yep.
I grew up all my life hearing that as blacks, we were going to be sent back to Africa. Rev Leroy, you were ahead of me a little bit by a couple of years, but was that something that you constantly heard? I used to hear it all the time.
I constantly heard that.
Yeah.
And it was something that you just push aside, because you are thinking in terms of Jefferson. Really, we were saying that he was telling us that we are free, and I was reading the Declaration and everything and saying that this is the way we're supposed to be.
Now, who was telling you, Jackie? Who was saying that you were going back to Africa? White folks, or
from someone white? That's why I was just getting ready to correct Reverend Cannon that no, it wasn't brushed by. I didn't brush it off because of where it was coming from in my time in the 60s.
Yeah. Okay.
During Jim Crow, whenever I was being called the N-word and things like that. This is when I heard it, and it scared me.
I believe you.
Because it came from a white person.
Yeah.
Now, Reverend Cannon, you didn't experience that. That's what I'm asking.
I was about to say, yes, I heard that.
Not from a white person, and when you were young.
White folk and black folk also.
Right.
But still, we were adhering to the Constitution that was supposed to apply to everybody.
Okay. We haven't learned that yet.
It never did go away. And now it is being accented even more.
Yeah.
And we can hear even today the rhetoric of sending people of color
back to Africa.
Back to Africa.
Where
Right.
are you hearing that now? Because I am not hearing that. So
No, I'm not hearing it now.
I'm
He's talking.
I'm not saying that didn't happen. I'm just
Yeah.
saying where are you hearing that now?
Political.
Yeah, I don't hear it now.
Political rhetoric,
Yes,
more dominated by one party than another.
yes, by him.
And and the curious thing that just happened is in Idaho, in the panhandle of Idaho, a very, very Nazi stronghold, there was somebody running, they were having a forum, like the League of Women Voters, all kinds of people there. And the one for Congress said, in answer to the question, is there racism in Idaho? He says, oh, definitely not. We're just a wonderful batch of people. Jabbered on. And someone stood up and said, au contraire, that's not true. I experience it all the time. And he interrupted her and said, well, I'm not going to listen to that liberal claptrap. Why don't you go back to where you came from? And she was a Nez Perce Native American. She was where she came from. That was her tribal land.
My gosh.
So, talk about how stories just get embedded and you shift the focus very slightly. You could be, say, Haitians or Irish or Native Americans. It's my heart is heavy.
Yeah. And I heard it not recently, but I heard rumblings back when I was a teenager in Peoria, Illinois, on the south side of Peoria. My high school was about 50% black, 50% white. I later found out, though, some of the roots of this, that slum area in Peoria, Illinois was originally in the late 1800s a German slum.
Wow.
Low-wage German workers were brought over to work in the factories, and that is where they were thrown, was into that area, and that was the German slum, and that's where I was born. But by the time I got to high school, there was still a lot of Germans in that, low-wage Germans in the area, but there were also a lot of African Americans. And some of those Germans, even 70 years after they had come over to this country, were saying, we need to ship all these black folk back to Africa where they belong. They don't belong in our slum.
Yeah. That's that whole business of giving privilege to the poor whites so they could say anything they want and even create strange fruit from trees.
Right. Yeah. And I think I've mentioned before that my first wife was Mexican, but was born and raised in Galesburg, Illinois. And as we were dating and after we were married, I noticed that same phenomenon that the white upper class was playing the African American community off against the Mexican community in Galesburg to keep them fighting each other so they wouldn't mess around fighting with the rich white folk in town. And that was in the 1970s and early 80s. So it had become profitable. And we read about it in our book periodically about, especially in Virginia, that, they had the poor white indentured servants, former indentured servants, and they would give them a little bit of privilege so that they would be a guardian against the slaves. And then we'll get to later on in this tonight's section, the Prosser Rebellion, when the slaves, the leaders of that rebellion, enlisted some of the poor whites in Virginia. So thanks for coming in, Jackie. Anytime, just slap me, and if you have a question or a comment, that's what we're here for. And I like this quote from Jefferson's book, Notes on the State of Virginia. He wrote, incorporating the freed blacks into the state was out of the question. Deep-rooted prejudice entertained by the whites, 10,000 recollections by the blacks of injuries that they have sustained, new provocations, the real distinctions which nature has made, and many other circumstances will divide us into parties and produce convulsions, which will probably never end but in the extermination of one race or the other. I thought that was kind of a prophetic statement. We see that. We still see some of that. And that's why we're meeting, I think, is to try to work through those types of things. Then in this chapter, we read about two great compromises in the new country's constitution. The first being dividing into two governing structures, the Senate and the House of Representatives. Why do we need two of them?
They wanted to give, the South wanted to have some place where they could, with lesser numbers of citizens, have equal power and have a check against the northern people. Yeah, because the representatives are by number of people, and there just were a lot more of them up north than there were down south.
Right. So how did they decide we would determine the population of a state? Just go around and count every person in the state?
When the South came along, they do, what is it, 2/3?
Yeah, 3/5.
3/5.
Yeah, they came up with a compromise.
Yeah. I found that really silly.
And why would the South want the slaves counted at all? Because it gave them more population, even if it was they were only 3/5 of a person.
Yeah.
So they could still have more representatives. Now, Bishop Yost, now is when, during this time, Jefferson's not there. He's not working on the Constitution. He was taking solace that they'd won the war over in France. He thought, the French Revolution was going on. He was all hunky-dory with the French Revolution because it was inspired by the American Revolution. But then what happens?
Haiti.
That's right. There's a Haitian Revolution right at America's doorstep, where the enslaved Africans rose up against French rule. And the French opposed that. And it was a revolt that the Haitians won. And Jefferson and the other slaveholders feared that the Haitian rebellion would inspire their slaves to do it and start fighting back themselves. So there's a lot of tension.
I like the author said that Haiti became a beacon of freedom, not the United States. And I think that's a different way of understanding history and looking at what really happened. And even though Haiti has gone through so many struggles ever since then, and a lot of those struggles happened because white people wanted to keep. So white people wanted to continue to put Haiti in the worst possible trade possibilities. They refused to trade with them. There was a lot of white resistance to Haiti being a free country for blacks.
Right.
And they didn't want them to succeed.
They did not want them to succeed.
Yeah.
It would be bad influence on slaves, really, in America.
Yeah.
And it just dawned on me. Did anybody ever study the Haitian or even hear about the Haitian slave revolution when you were in elementary school or high school?
No, not here in South Carolina. No, that was not taught.
Well, I didn't. I never read about it in Illinois.
I probably had a paragraph or two in northern Illinois.
Okay.
farther up from Peoria. I mean, Rockford is a little.
Okay.
Guys,
No.
But it was only a couple paragraphs. It was like Haiti had a revolution and the slaves were going to follow suit in the South, but they got somebody ratted them out and they all got wiped out. But that it did not have the tone of a beacon of democracy and freedom. It just was there was this revolution and it almost had happened in the South, but we got it squished.
and that's coming up, and that was a big revolution, and if they hadn't been ratted out, they would have been wiped out. A lot of people would have been wiped out. So we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Well, Bruce, I mean, not Bruce, but Rick, I believe what I was following along with you, and I believe we were on page 61.
Okay.
And there's something I just want to stress among us before we go any further. And it's the reason that the author has named this book Stamped, and why the other one was stamped from the beginning. And it's on page 61 when he says the part about maybe the slaves might be able to achieve 5/5 at some point in their lives, wholeness, whiteness, one day. And so it says, and for segregationists, it proved that slaves were mathematically wretched. Segregationists and assimilationists may have had different intentions, but both of them, both the segregationalists and assimilationists, both of them agreed that Black people were inferior. And that agreement, that shared bond, allowed slavery and racist ideas to be permanently stamped into the founding document of America. I just wanted to lift that up.
Okay,
as
good.
Stamp.
Thank you.
That's helpful.
That's the stamp that this discussion that we're having today is this stamp.
I was wondering about the stamped.
Yeah, there it is right there. It just explained it right there. And this is what we've been living over the past, decades.
And actually that phrase was also used later on by the president of the Confederacy in a speech where he said that Black people were stamped with inferiority by God.
Isn't that something?
As part of the justification for slavery.
Isn't that rough?
The beginning of the Civil War.
Right.
So yeah, that's a very important word. Thank you.
Okay, I wanted to just pull that out. Yeah, because it just resonated with me. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Well, good.
And I'm wondering, has that changed? Has that thought changed?
No.
Nope, not completely.
People still think that way.
Unfortunately, not completely.
And you want me to tell you where that kind of comes from to a certain degree, and this is my experience with poor whites. I'm just saying, my relationship with with some real poor whites, that I hear words, I hear a conversation or something that literally lets me know that they're still of that mindset, that they're amazed. Like even me being here in this white church of the Lutheran church, there's some people that sometimes they have to be careful not to say blatantly how they're impressed with me being Black and having somewhat of the wisdom or the know-how or I run into it. I'm telling you, I do.
I believe you.
Yeah. Okay.
And the theory behind that is you're the exception.
Yeah.
That's right. And I'm different from the rest of
all
them.
the other African Americans are the norm, and you're the bright spot.
That's right.
And that's another way of assimilation.
That's right. That's right.
And it sounds like a compliment, but it is not a compliment.
And it's not a compliment, especially you're different from the rest of them.
It is uplift suasion. It is what this next chapter is all about.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. And I was going to, it begins with Black people, slaves started to get free. they started to get some ideas that they didn't have to stay slaves. They were runaways. And abolitionists urged newly freed people to go to church regularly, learn to speak proper English, learn math, adopt trades, get married, stay away from vices like smoking and drinking, and basically live what they would consider to be respectable lives. Basically, live like white people.
Live like white people.
Black people behave.
Live like
yeah. Just do it. You behaved right. It could prove all those stereotypes wrong just because you proved that you can live like a white person.
That's
Does
right.
that mean they had to give up their rhythm? I mean, this is dumb.
That would be hard.
It's like the camel going through the eye of a needle. I mean, it's just silliness.
And that was called uplift.
Yeah.
Suasion. Is that the way you say that?
Suasion. Yeah. Which I don't know why they have two different ways, but basically it's the same thing that assimilationists were saying.
Yeah.
Just assimilate. Pretend like you're white.
Uplift.
In fact, on page 166, I like this. The last part, it says, it's important that you keep this in mind because it would be the cornerstone of assimilationist thought, which basically said, make yourself small.
Okay.
Make yourself unthreatening.
Right.
Don't threaten them. Make yourself the same.
Yes.
Make yourself safe.
Yes.
Make yourself quiet to make white people comfortable with your existence.
It happens today.
What is he saying? What is he saying?
Oh, yeah. Do you remember the scene in the movie Origin?
Okay.
Where Isabel Wilkerson, her husband, and her mother are here sitting, listening to a newscast about the killing of Trayvon Martin. What does her mom say?
What did she say, Rick?
She said he should have acted differently.
Yeah.
He should have acted differently. Was
Bruce,
it his fault because well, no,
Yeah.
but he should have acted differently. If he'd acted differently, he wouldn't have gotten killed.
Another way of saying
He
that
acted
is
like a white.
blame the victim for the violence that white people use to attack blacks. Blame the victim. It's the victim's fault.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if he had acted
He
white,
just acted the same as white folk, maybe he'd be alive.
That's right.
I don't think that protects you. We've got too many incidents where it didn't happen that way. Even though they'd gotten the speech, they found themselves driving down the wrong road with the wrong patrol person.
That's right.
And sometimes it was even a young lady. I mean,
Yep. I just have to interject with my good folks here on this, in this study. You know what agitates me while I'm reading this type of literature? That people who need to read it, people who would benefit in their hearts and their minds if they would read, and they will not, they'll be the last ones to read this. And I think about you all, and I think about the races, and I think about who's white in this group, and who's reading this, and who has a heart, and whatever. Because there's this person later on in one of the chapters that we get to, that it was like hearing how this person, a white man, was just like, slavery's wrong, slavery's just wrong, and I'm not gonna go with it. I'm not going to go with it, and I'm going. And I know people like that today that feel that way. You all are part of that thought that nobody's inferior to the next person, and you don't want to see human beings treated like they're less than or animals. So I just had to say that, Rick. Now go ahead, get back into your groove.
True. It's like preaching to the choir, but
I know that bothers you, Jackie.
Say what?
there's still some things
That bothered you.
Herman, did you say?
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. That the people that need to read the most aren't reading it. I didn't know that bothered you. I'm kidding.
Of course you are, because I'm always saying it.
That's right. That's right. Okay. Sarah?
Well, and in fact, the people who need to read it are banning the books that say it.
Oh yeah, this book would not be allowed in most schools.
Oh,
that's right.
Absolutely not.
That's right.
This would be considered. Yeah, this
And
would
that's
be.
why they're banning it, because they don't want these seditious
Yeah, oh
ideas
yeah.
to affect our society, and maybe we begin to treat each other like equals. That's not what they want.
That's right.
Yeah, especially young people. Don't let young people read this.
Let's keep
because
white
they will
America
actually.
great. Let's keep white America great.
Yeah.
Okay, Sarah,
Okay.
Jackie,
hold your hand up at one time, Sarah, and maybe you might want to hear from Bruce or Coon. Sarah, anything you had to add to that?
Well, yeah, well, I was just saying preaching to the choir, but there's still some things in here that are helping me, but
Amen.
helping me in my
Oh, yeah.
interactions with other white folk that I can bring up some of these things that are just so shocking. It's
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Good, Sarah.
And
Jackie, thank you for interjecting some things because it really helps to understand your own experience
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
with these things.
Mm-hmm.
Because even reading this, it adds another dimension when you share this is how you experienced it.
Right. Absolutely. And still experiencing it too. I experienced it when I was a young girl growing up in South Carolina doing Jim Crow. I got that experience. And then I got the educate. You go and you get yourself an education and you get a good job and you work your way, that pull yourself up by your bootstraps kind of thing. I've got that experience. And then now I'm in the world that I'm living in now. I still have run into situations because of my race. Not to mention the gender part.
Yeah.
The gender is even something
Two strikes.
entirely different. Yeah. But yeah. Okay. Anyway. All right. I can't wait for us to get to what we're at.
The great contradictor. This is all about basically all about Thomas Jefferson. But the more I read it, the more a lot of us white folk have to, well, I think everybody has to look at the contradictions in our lives sometimes.
Yes.
What we've been through before and what we believe. But anyway, 10 days ago, while I was working on the outline for tonight, one of my favorite singer-songwriters, Chris Christopherson, died.
Oh,
by the way, he was the son of a.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know Chris Christopherson had died? Yeah, he died at age 89 10 days ago. And he was the son of a Swedish Lutheran immigrant.
Okay.
And as I was starting to look at chapter 10, one of his songs came back to me. One of my favorites of his songs from the album Silver Tongued Devil and I. It's a song called The Pilgrim, chapter 33. And he wrote that song about some of his musical friends and compatriots he hung out with. Got like Johnny Cash and Jerry Jeff Walker and Dennis Hopper and Ramblin' Jack Elliott. A little bit of all those are in this song. But I'd like us to listen to the song's refrain and see if it doesn't remind us a little of Thomas Jefferson or maybe of ourselves, if I can get this to work. I've never done this before. Come on. Come on. There we go. Okay. From the beginning.
Ooh.
It working?
It's working.
Yeah, it's working.
He's a picker. He's a pusher. He's a pilgrim and a preacher, and the problem when he's stoned. He's a walking contradiction, partly truth and partly fiction, taking ever wrong direction on his lonely way back home.
Contradiction.
On that lonely way.
Wow.
Back home.
Oh wow.
And just that line in there, he's a walking contradiction, partly truth and partly fiction.
Yeah.
Reminded me of Thomas Jefferson.
That's
I think we all have ideas from our youth of what Thomas Jefferson was like from our early childhood history lessons. But Thomas Jefferson was a complicated man, like all of us all. We're all complicated human beings, but Jefferson even more so. So we're going to look at some of his contradictions.
You see that the author named him Thomas Contradiction Jefferson.
Yeah,
that's his middle name now. Okay.
Yeah. And
all right.
The chapter starts out with that story we mentioned. Somebody mentioned earlier on the story of the Prossers.
Yeah.
In 1800, they were planning a slave rebellion, recruited hundreds of slaves and even some white folk.
Yep.
To revolt. They had it all mapped out. Hundreds of captives were supposed to march on Richmond. They'd steal 4,000 unguarded muskets, arrest the governor, and hold the city until other slaves arrived from surrounding counties to negotiate the end of slavery and establish equal rights. A big plan for anybody.
And who ruined it?
2 renegade slaves.
Snitches.
I guess it got in the other.
Tell me how you really feel, Jackie.
Yeah. In the original book, I think, as I remember, it said that the revolt got delayed by a couple days because of really bad weather, a lot of heavy rains.
Okay.
And while that was happening, those 2 slaves went to their masters and told them what was going on.
Yep.
And of course, the Prossers ended up getting killed.
That's right.
Gale was hung. His wife, I think, was shot.
Yep. Game over.
But when you say big, you're talking about 50,000 rebels.
Yeah.
That was huge.
That was a huge.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Huge.
And it was organized by slaves.
Yeah.
Yep.
No.
Those animals with no brains.
That's right.
And did you notice who the governor was that they were going to kidnap and take captive?
James Monroe.
James Monroe. Later a president.
That's right. Daggone it.
But as it says on page 7, he said, well, as Jackie said, game over.
Game
not
over.
completely. The attempted and failed revolt made slave owners nervous.
Nervous.
So up from the soil of slavery sprouted new racist ideas to protect white lives. And one of them was sending those black slaves back to Africa or to the Caribbean.
To the
Thomas
motherland.
Jefferson's original
to the motherland. Yeah.
Colonization idea.
Yeah.
And so
Black
now we're
people
getting
didn't want to go back. Hear that?
That's right. That's right.
Black people didn't want to go
No.
back.
That's not our home anymore. This is our home now. We built
That's
all
right.
this.
And they did.
America was their land. Okay.
Yep. That was a question I had written down. How did the black people react to the idea of colonization? No, thank you.
No, thank you. No, thank you.
We'd rather stay here, and we'll get you. One of these days, we'll get you.
Right.
That's just like telling me to go back to Africa. That is not my home.
Oh yeah.
This is my home. Yes.
I'm trying to think. Did I share this with you all one time about the seminarian that said that to me at LTSS?
No, I don't remember it.
You all don't know that when I was the only African American sleeping over in Beam Dorm. And there was a Lutheran white female that said to me one day, I was wearing leopard shoes and a leopard blouse. And she said to me, first she said I looked like Dorothy on crack. That was the first thing she said. Dorothy on crack. Then she said, if I click my heels, I'd probably end up back in Africa. That was said to me
Lord.
at the seminary, at Southern Seminary, by a white female. And it was the hardest thing that had happened to me in my life. And what we're reading in this book about who to act like, that's what I had to do. I had to act like I'm white and not be who I really was by going off on her, cursing her out, hitting her, because that's just how much it provoked me. Now you think about that a white Lutheran student over there at that seminary said that to me. There was another white person, two white people listening, and one of them goes, Jackie, you should soccer one. You hear what I said?
Yeah.
But because I wanted to get my theological education at Southern Seminary and be on this path that God had placed me on, I could not retaliate in the anger that I felt. So I had to tell the woman she better get away, and I had to get in a corner and cry and hurt when I wanted to act out my anger. And had I acted out that anger, I wouldn't be here today in the position that I'm in. Okay? But just to think that she didn't know any better.
That's a sad story.
It is.
She didn't know any better, but what the Holy Spirit.
Hell yes, she knew better. She didn't want to know any better. I'm sorry. She does not get a free pass. She does not get a free pass.
I know, but the idea was she had already befriended me to the point that she had told me about how racist her mother and father was, and she was always sharing things with me about how her upbringing. So just having that in the back of my mind and knowing this, she couldn't help herself. She was only expressing what was in her. And then when I went to her to let her know in a calm way how she had crossed the line, and as she'd done it with any other black woman but me, she would have been on the floor. You don't understand what I'm saying? So I dealt with it in a way that, I'm just going to be honest with you all, I still ended up winning this particular female after she graduated before me and everything. And so she ended up confessing some things to me. And I'm just saying, because what I let her know is that if you want to be a Lutheran pastor, God may call you into an area where you will have to deal with black people. And you need to be careful and ask God to help you with what comes out of your mouth, because she had crossed the line. She even said that I had my hair scarf on my head, and she even said I looked like I was on the package of an Aunt Jemima. Now Leroy and Helen, if you're black and you're hearing this, you wondered, how did Jackie take that?
I know how Jackie took that.
Because you've been through it yourself. Yeah. But either way, I just thought I couldn't help but just interject that just then.
You know, there's a whole bunch of studies that suggest that how you live as a young adult and then a mature adult still has what you learned up to about age 9. And if she had very racist parents,
yes,
that was in her, and
yeah.
it's like
she couldn't help it.
It's like shingles. It's like shingles. It's the virus is inside you, just waiting to come out. You never know when it's going to come out. Yeah. I don't think there's a Shingrix that we could inoculate the population with to keep that from happening.
Okay. Well.
But it sounds like you did. Sounds like you did, Jackie. You inoculated her in little inoculations the rest of your time together.
Yeah, she came back later and let me know. See, she was a senior. She ended up getting denied in candidacy.
Oh.
She didn't get through. And she came to me and let me know that was necessary for her to go back through the process, a different person. And then she eventually did get you know, she did get through candidacy.
So
But she shared that with me.
system worked, and you worked,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
worked.
Okay. All right. So
Well, thank you.
all righty. And
Anyway,
okay, where are we?
so
Contradiction.
the idea of colonization comes up again, which
Yeah.
leads to one of Jefferson's contradictions. He's proposed or pushed the idea of colonization for blacks.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? On the next page, it talks about the American Colonization Society. Yeah. Jefferson consistently refused to support that organization.
Yeah.
He pushed the idea himself, but he wouldn't support an organization working toward it.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the slaves didn't want to go to Africa anyway.
That's right.
And then some other contradictions. Jefferson helped to frame the American Revolution, even though he spent the war in hiding. Then he went over to France and admired and supported the French Revolution 10 years later. However, what was his view of the Haitian Revolution? In the bigger original version of this book, it says, Jefferson did not view the Haitian Revolution in the same way as the American and French revolutions. And he says, quote, never was so deep a tragedy presented to the feelings of man. To Jefferson, the slave revolt against enslavers was more evil and tragic to the feelings of man than the millions of American people or African people who died on American plantations. He would later call the general and other Haitian leaders cannibals of a terrible republic. So even though it was people fighting for their freedom, the same as in the American Revolution and the French Revolution, Jefferson completely rejected the Haitian Revolution as barbaric. Another contradiction. Jefferson was a staunch opponent of interracial relationships. However, we all know how that ended, don't we?
Yeah, Sally Henning. Mm-hmm.
Sally Heming.
Sally
while he was in France, he sent for his 8-year-old daughter Polly to come over and spend some time with him. And the lady who brought her over to take care of her was Sally Hemings, whom he initiated a sexual relationship with, which resulted in at least 3 children. And I liked what the editorialist in the Richmond, Virginia Recorder newspaper wrote. He said, by this wench, which was a very nasty term back in those days, our president has several children. The relationship began in France when Jefferson was endeavoring so hard to belittle the African race. At the same time, he's making children by this half African African woman. He's trying to put down the African race publicly.
He was a piece of work, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He really was a piece
he
of work.
was.
Why do you say he was he left America?
He just went over. His wife had died.
Okay, his wife died.
His wife had died, and he went over to France. He had been in France previously, but he went back over there after his wife had died.
But he also was running from the king.
From Britain.
From Britain, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he was standing up for slavery.
Yeah, and then a few years later, he's president.
Okay.
And comes up with another contradiction on page 72. He brought about a new Slave Trade Act. The goal was to stop the import of people from Africa and the Caribbean into America. But the act was passed, but it didn't really do much good. So later on in the page it says, and Jefferson, the man who signed this transatlantic slave trade act, started breeding slaves. He and other like-minded slave owners began forcing their men and women slaves to conceive children so that they, the owners, could keep up with all the farming demands. And actually, they sold a lot of them.
Because they were chattel. You know?
And called them birthing, and they were literally birthing farming machines.
Yeah.
Tractors with heartbeats, backhoes that bleed. This is what the author says on page 7.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to even conceive of that for me in this day.
Yeah.
But this guy who, on one hand, is trying to end the importation of slaves, and you have to wonder, was it in the back of his mind already? Well, you know, if we stop them from coming over, then we can just breed them here, and I can make money off the deal.
Yeah. Yeah. What a plan.
He kept his slaves also.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he said he would free them at some point, but then, you know, he went to his deathbed and never freed his slaves.
That's right.
That's right.
I think he did free Sally Hammond, the children with Sally Hammond.
But
other than that, but all the rest of those good friends he had that were black, they were still slaves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't get free.
Tell me about those black.
And in fact,
that he kept enslaved. Zeke.
Oh, the deathbed issue. He gathered the house slaves and probably some of the higher up field slaves, and he was dying, and he just liked to have those good people by him. But he only freed the children that he had from Sally.
That's right. That's right.
But the rest, they ended up being, I don't know, auction of sales. I don't know how that went.
Yeah, they were auctioned off.
Yes, then when the estate was settled,
Yes. Okay. Contradiction. They called him contradiction.
Yeah, then of course the Louisiana Purchase was kind of a contradiction because, you know, enlarged the country, all good stuff, except one of the reasons he supposedly did it was so he could sell more slaves to the area out there. They could set up more plantations.
Rick, I think the book pointed out that when Jefferson died, he was like over $2.5 million in debt in today's currency. So, I mean, it was all, as we know, economics, you know, was all about wealth and, you know, his position and power and greed.
Yeah.
And other than he was very intelligent. He did a lot of great things, but other than that, other than the fact he did a lot of good things, I couldn't help but think just a moment ago, a lot like Donald Trump, who would do anything.
Oh, did you say that?
To make money, because he's never had a successful business deal in his entire adult life. And
you didn't say that.
Who knows what? I did. I wouldn't say it at church.
No,
draw the line there.
It says recorded.
Draw the line there.
I thought he had a successful business of selling tennis shoes and Bibles.
There you go.
Tennis shoes and Bibles.
And Bibles, yeah.
And those Bibles have been redirected to that state that says you have to use them in the classroom.
What state was that? Remember? What state?
Is it Oklahoma?
I think you're right. Might be Oklahoma.
Yes.
And when they wrote the specifications for which Bible shall you purchase, which will be acceptable for this schooling, it's uncannily just like the Bible that he's trying to hawk. So he's covering that loss by selling them to Oklahoma.
Yeah, it has the Declaration of Independence in it.
Oh, absolutely. Don't you know? Dun, dun,
Now,
dun,
the next question is, has he ever read that? I'm pretty sure he's never read the Constitution.
Or the Bible.
Yeah.
Or the Bible. Right.
Or the Bible.
Yeah,
Or the Bible.
he has several books that he thinks are really great in the Bible, but he can't tell you which ones they are.
Didn't he write his own Bible and
What?
omitted certain chapters? And
Jefferson did. There is a Jeffersonian.
Oh, Jefferson Bible.
Jefferson
Yeah,
Bible.
there is a Jefferson.
Right.
No, Mr. Trump just.
Oh, I forgot we were talking about.
Added the
Oh my
Constitution
goodness, I
and
thought we were
leatherback
still
so that
talking
they can
about
sell.
Jefferson.
Yeah.
To the states, and then if he becomes president, he can sell to even more states. Yes.
There you go.
Okay. All right. We're
Okay.
coming down to the end here. Before your closing here, anybody else? Let's see. We've heard from it. Just about everybody.
Miho, anything you want to say, Miho?
Where are you, Miho?
Miho, are you there?
Oh,
Miho.
there she is.
Hello, Miho. Miho, do you want to add anything to this conversation?
It's very, very educational. And I just want to say, Pastor Jackie, thank you for sharing your story.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Jackie.
Okay, that's why.
How about your husband?
I wanted to make sure you heard it, Miho. I said, "Oh, Miho's listening. Oh my goodness." Okay.
You want to say hi to your husband too?
Yeah.
Oh.
He doesn't often get in on the conversations.
All right. Very good.
Hi.
Anybody else?
Well, I just wanted to say this is my first time, being in a part of this group, and I really appreciate it. We all have just a common concern about these things, and but I really enjoyed reading the book and enjoyed the conversation tonight. And thank you for everybody's input. I was listening.
Amen.
Thank you, Dan.
Great to have you.
We're glad to have you.
And I would encourage everybody to maybe just spend a little time thinking about our lives and the contradictions that we've lived through that have formed us, and what contradictions we might be fighting with right now, and bring them to God in our prayers. Because I know I have them.
Yeah.
It reminds me.
I think Bishop Yost knows one of my big ones is that I'm a minister who does not like organized religion. I fight that every day, honestly. I fight that every day.
What does disorganized religion look like?
Like what I do.
Oh, okay. I'll take notes. I'll be better informed.
It reminds me of what Jesus said, that don't worry about the speck in your brother's eye when you've got a log in your eye.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Before
We can still love what Thomas Jefferson did.
11. Okay. Go where? All right. Before
So where are we stopping? Hey, Rev, where are we stopping? Let's make note of it.
We finished section 2.
We finished section 2. We're going to section 3, starting at 11, and we shall go to. I have marked down 15, 16, 17. I don't know.
Okay.
I think we start section 4. That's pretty short chapters, 83 to 107.
So we start section 3, and we go to 15, 16, and 17 in section 4.
Okay.
And I will be the leader for that.
Okay. And if we don't get all the way there, that's okay. I mean, that's ambitious, but that you're in charge of that.
Okay. And then of course, that's where you take over, and
okay.
Then we'll find out. Okay. Anything else for the good? If not, then Rick, you give us our closing.
Okay. The Lord be with you.
And also with
you.
Let us pray.
Yes.
We thank you, Lord, for our conversations this evening, and for your blessings of thoughtful evaluations and reevaluations of what we think and how we act. Forgive all of our inconsistencies and contradictory thoughts and actions over the courses of our lives, and help us to prayerfully consider the directions in which we should move now. We thank you especially for your Son, Jesus Christ, who's lifted the burden of our many sins and replaced them with your grace and with your love. And it's in his name that we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
As we go and tell somebody to join us the next time. And then, of course, we always want to thank Neil, who was here even after you're gone.
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Neil.
Thank you, Neil.